Stop. Here. All right. So, as I had posted for this, it's all about testimony. That is the plan for this particular one. It's all about the testimony. So, what I'm going to do right now is I'm actually going to give my testimony in a full version that is going to be from beginning to current and all the situations in between. That's what it's all planned out to be. So it's not going to be any sort of like bits and pieces and everything. It's going to be the whole deal. So let's go start back when I was 6 years old. I was, for the most part, because my dad was not exactly, I wouldn't say he wasn't exactly a good parent. It was more that he didn't know how to parent. On top of the fact that he had a drinking problem. So, the best way to deal with me was just kind of let me do whatever. So, I grew up watching horror movies because that's, he rented those a lot. So, that's what I watched a lot. So, watching stuff with a lot of death in it left me with the whole question in my head as I kept getting older of what happens? Where do we go? So, given the fact that I watched a lot of movies, that's kind of where my mind went. Is that when it comes to that time, your life is a movie, the credits roll when it's coming to an end, and then once it's all over, everything goes black, and that's it. That it is all done. So yeah, I was at the belief that once life was over, it was over. There was nothing coming after. Of course. So anyway, in that belief system, that's how it all went down. Was that you know once it was done, it was done. There was no going back. So, So, believing things to go that way, I was in the state of mind of no, there was nothing. Once it was said and done, it was done. Plain and simple. There was no afterlife. You weren't going to turn into a ghost. There was nowhere to go. It was just over. We were here for a minute and then we were gone. That's all I thought. And then I got a little older and I wound up going to church with my stepmother, which wasn't great because me and her didn't always see eye to eye. It was more like me and her got along before her and my dad were married. Then once they were married, everything got rocky. So then it got to a point where I was very skeptical about everything going on because church was not really my greatest time given everything that I saw. Because the church was huge. We were all pretty much a bunch of faceless nobodies in the crowd. I don't think the pastors really knew much of anybody past the first two sets of pews. You know, when you're on one of a couple thousand people, you're basically a nobody. And this whole entire, not just single facility, but the different facilities that were on the same grounds as the main church building. I mean, it was basically like there had to have been, in just the building of that property, you know, there's churches that struggle to, when it comes to building a facility, even when it's just thousands of dollars. This place, we're talking like it took millions of dollars to build this whole thing on this property. Like it was probably, I would say, at least 10 acres or so of land. And most of it was buildings and parking lot. That's exactly how it was set up. And I was not really a fan of anything there because it didn't really seem like you were anything that anybody knew. You know, like as far as being anything to that place, it was like unless you were a top contributor to things going on around there, you were really nobody. And that's the way I always saw it. So I just was always very bitter about church because of my perception. So it really, at that point, kind of killed any chances of me having real belief. Um, I mean, at some point in there, I can't remember exactly when, if it was before that or after, because as a kid, there's certain parts that just kind of run together. So it's sort of hard to remember. But at one point in time, which then I didn't think much of, except for it was a very odd thing to happen, I didn't maybe there was some intervention. So, as a child and growing up watching a lot of TV and a lot of movies, um, I had watched some movies and I had gotten familiar with a certain film series. And I had a dream of a certain movie. The only thing is the movie I had a dream about had not actually been created yet. So what I dreamt about, I don't know if it was something that was already planned in the works and might have oh, and I was somehow connecting to it or whatever it was, but I recall within months afterwards, that's when I started to get information about this movie that I just kind of dreamt up. So, sometime down the road, we'll go ahead and we'll skip on down the road a little bit. So, sometime down the road, while I was still in my non religious lifestyle, I got into smoking stuff. About 13 at that time. And I got into high school. Um, I found myself not only smoking it, but selling it. And about a year and a half into the school I was going to, I found myself in a situation where the school had basically been like, okay, um, we don't want you here anymore. We would rather you go to a different school. So that's where that was at. They were basically pushing me out of that school because of, well, all I wanted to do was ditch, get stoned, and you know, basically spend the vast majority of my time not at school. So the next thing you know, I'm off to another school. I'm there for a few months, and then I get in trouble for possession on a school campus and wind up having to pay a fine. And then there was community service and all this great, wonderful stuff. So, going from there, I go on to my junior year, and it winds up being my final year at that school. So, after that, I wind up going to another school because the school that I was going to joined with another one. So I end up having to move to a different campus yet again. But this time around, the school that I'm going to is like right in the middle of town. So making ditching so much easier once again. And I had to do my best to try to stick in school, and I still had my times of ditching and doing my best to not get caught, which I managed to do. But then once I turned 18, I started signing myself out of school and leaving at lunch and not coming back. So from there, I find myself uh, going, just kind of hanging out in town. I was also a cigarette smoker at this time as well, and I find myself basically still not not religious at all. I was actually far from it. I was at a point of where I was, instead of praying for God's help, I was doing quite the opposite. I was yelling at him and blaming him for everything that was happening. Everything that was going wrong, I was blaming him. I yelled. I even dropped my pants and mooned the sky because that's how angry I was. I felt he was doing nothing of help for me, and that basically, if he did exist, he basically hated me. That's where my life was. That's where my thought process was, and I just found myself not caring. I would rather get stoned and drink and just not care at all about anything, and stay convinced that, well, he didn't care about me, so why should I care? And it was like that for a long time. I found myself having a daughter at the age of 28, which was years after all of my friends, and the relationship with me and her mother fell apart within 2 years. So I was single, father of a baby that was about a year and a half. And I was angry, bitter, and just did not care at all. Had a few unsuccessful relationships. Did kind of cut back on my drinking, trying to be a responsible parent and take care of a baby while I was back to living at home to a program that helped me find a job. And while I was there, I would say my daughter at the time was probably about 5, 4 or 5 years old. And, I had been picking up quite the bill for my child support. And so at that point in time, while feeling like things were just continuing to go downhill, finding myself having to go to court with child support, and they were pretty much at a point of where they were getting ready to put me in jail to try to sit it off to pay back the money I owed. I got a job, and I was working, and they were at the time they were garnishing my wages, and that was taking some of the money that I was owing, so it's started to help a little bit. Only problem is that little did I know at the time that I was barely paying back what I owed and was just kind of paying what I had to pay. So I was barely paying off any of the back owed and was mainly just paying what I had to pay per month. But I kept that job for a year and a half until the company closed. Then I ended up having to find another job. But before that company had closed, I had gotten together with my current wife, and she off and on stayed with me while I was still at home. But like I said, then I ended up losing that job and then having to get another one. And I held on to that job for a while until the big shutdown happened, and COVID-19. So we were stuck through the pandemic. Did not help didn't help my feelings at all towards the Lord at all. I just thought, great, fantastic, another problem. And then come towards the end of the year where things were starting to get better, I got another job, and I held on to that job for almost 3 years. And I held on to that one until what I realize now, part of the way that people are in this current generation of easily offended is all part of somebody else's doing, making it to where people jumping to offense is something that he likes to do just to make things more difficult for everybody. So there was that. And then it took me a little time to find another job. But in this whole process, me and her started living together in our own apartment. Then there was the problem of between me and her working, we were making too much money. We had recently, at that point in time, gotten pregnant with my second daughter, and then her first daughter daughter, the second child together. So, yeah, while that was going on, um, we found ourselves on the road of getting kicked out. And then we ended up having to go move in with her parents. And I found another job while there. And in that whole time frame, um, we ended up hanging out with her ex-husband and his wife, and they were having a home meeting. And this home meeting, I was given the opportunity to be saved and be given a chance to be born again, and I took the opportunity. Which at the time I didn't think anything of it. Oh, sorry, got to stretch a little bit. Anyway, I didn't think anything of it at the time, but I took that opportunity. And that happened. Then we started going to church with them, and that's when things really started to kind of come together. And then I had got baptized, and things changed even more. And that's when I started to receive visions, and then got a deeper understanding to how the world truly works. And I have become more and more of a believer every day. Oh, man. So, basically, that is the story. And the visions have increased in many different ways ever since. And I have absolutely no regrets. And wish I had been born again sooner. So I do encourage people to take that path because you'll be surprised what can happen. So anyway, that being said, I hope you all have a good night. I am cutting this one here because I got stuff I got to go do. So anyway, have a good night, all. God bless. Peace be with you. Many blessings, many prayers. Peace.